Yeah, we try.
You ready, Brother Corey?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, my brother.
Everyone, attention prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the world, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment in which we now live. Thee alone do we worship, thine aid we seek. O Allah, guide us along the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favor, not of those upon whom wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray. Ameen.
Ameen. Thank you. Brother Corey, would you be so kind for just briefly just share a few words of how this call has, what you gained from it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, in the name of his Christ, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in the name of the Jesus in our midst, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I greet you, brothers and sisters, in peace. Assalamu alaikum. We want to thank everyone for dialing in tonight. Those that are in the ministry class or interested in the ministry class, our brother, Student Minister Willie, has taken the time just to help bring some of the top student ministers that we have, or student ministers that we have in the Nation of Islam, just to help all of us that are in the ministry and striving to be in it, to learn some of the best practices and learn from experience and learn from some of those that have some experience and ways to help grow ourselves and even help grow our study groups or grow our mosque and different things that we have been asked to be in this mighty work, the ministry. And so for myself, I've been able to hear from many individuals we've had on the call, like Dr. Wesley, Brother Jesse, Brother Hugh, Brother Abdul Hafiz, Brother Student Minister Tony, just to name a few. And each one of them, has certain topics that could, again, help us be able to be better by hearing information from those that have been in the labor for some time. This is a mighty work that we do, a very important work that we do, but it's a work that we don't necessarily have a manual all the way to, but we can learn from one another what is called best practices in certain areas. So, again, I'm thankful to be able to be on tonight. Thankful to you, thankful to Allah, brother, for you for helping to put this call together and helping to bring content and value to all of us that are listening, that are either, again, in the ministry or as a part of the staff of the ministry or striving to be involved with the ministry. So I'll turn it back over to you, Brother Student Minister Willie.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all, brothers and sisters, for being on the call. We want to get right to it. And today we have a brother who's from headquarters. Our brother you're very familiar with. Is it Latino representative, Brother Abel? Am I saying it right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And our brother, he's going to talk about something that's very key. He's talking about how to structure and, an effective lecture. And I think our brother has a wealth of experience. He's had the opportunity to be around the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And from my conversation with him through text, he talked about how he plans on sharing some of the guidance Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has shared as it relates to that. And when I saw those articles that he emailed asking us to read, I really also felt good about the decision. So, Brother Abel, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put everybody on mute, and then you know what code you have to press to come on, and you can get started. You have about 35 minutes to talk. Then we'll open up for questions. All right?
Yes, sir.
Put everybody on mute.
Assalamu alaikum. Well, inshallah, everyone can hear me. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, and we thank him for raising for us and from us the promised Messiah, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and we thank them for giving to us today not only a reminder and a comforter, but a example of what heeding God's guidance and submitting our will to do the will of God can bring to us, which is oneness with God. And I'm speaking of our teacher and the man that we all attempt to represent, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It's in their names that I want to greet everyone this evening in the greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. And I thank Student Minister Willie for the great honor and invitation to just come on this evening and share a few words with you on proper teaching and lecturing and how do we accomplish it. And I'll start by saying that we have, by the grace of God, the most perfect example that we could be given of how and what to teach in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. The difficulty factor in it is that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is so special and so far out ahead of us, it sometimes appears to us, depending on how we view it, as if we'll never be able to reach where he is, that we'll never be able to be as effective as he is. And that may or may not be true to some degree or another. However, none of us were birthed to be him. He is unique and special in that way, in what he does. That's why millions of people literally will come to his calling. However, each of us should be able, if we are students of his and attempting to represent him, have some level of success that is equivalent wherever we are in our level of development to what he is doing and teaching. And this also directly will be reflected in our magnetism, if you will, in our attraction ability. As those who are students in the class of the ministry, that means we are taking on the huge responsibility of attempting to represent the representative of the Messiah. That is something that can't be taken lightly. It's something that honestly that I heard from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that you can't make a minister is born. So those of us who feel that this is your calling, our calling, this is something that we felt, and hopefully with the tools and the guidance of those you've heard before, we can help refine that gift and refine that tool. And I want to start by first letting you know that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I was blessed in 2002 to be in literally his classroom here in Chicago, where he was instructing us as his ministry class on how to prepare lectures, how to prepare khutbahs, what we should be studying. And by the grace of Allah, I'll share with you what he shared with us over those several weeks that we met with him. I'll start by saying that what we say, our words, are not as important as our heart and our character. Picking a subject can be easy enough. Getting the notes together for it can be easy enough. But its effect won't be measured or won't have the proper effect, which is measurable, if it's coming from a vessel that isn't itself striving to live up to the really, really powerful and weighty words that we're delivering. The minister reminded us in those classes that we should always have a dictionary when we're preparing and studying. Look up the words of the scriptures that we're going to raise. Look up the words that we want to use to make sure that we're using them properly and to make sure that we're using them effectively and understand all of the shades of the words. So I'll start with this definition for everyone. And by the grace of Allah, Brother Willie, after we get off here, I'll email you some of these that you can share with everyone who's on the line, some of these notes that I'm giving to you so that you can share with those who are a part of the class. But the first word, and I've used it already a couple of times tonight, is the word proper. there's three main words that I want to focus on tonight, and obviously it's proper, teaching, and lecture. Teaching means the occupation, profession, or work of a teacher, ideas or principles taught by an authority. A teacher is one who teaches. So when we look at the verb to teach, it means to show or explain to someone how to do something, give information about or instruction in a subject or skill, to encourage someone to accept something as a fact or principle, to cause someone to learn or understand something by example or experience. The word lecture means it's a noun, and it's an educational talk to an audience, especially of students in a university or college. It's a long, serious speech, especially one given as a scolding or a reprimand. Now, of course, we are not scolding or reprimanding people, but that's just an instance that they're giving as their definition. But it's not exclusively as such something that we are scolding or reprimanding those that are listening to us, but those are the definitions that we find in the dictionary for these words. And we, for the most part, I think, understand what it is to teach and what the lecture is, but that key word, that adverb that is used in front of it, proper teaching and lecturing, that's the key to it. Because we can teach anything and someone will listen to it, someone will agree, but is what we're teaching correct? Is it right? Is it proper? The word proper means satisfactorily or correctly. Since we're attempting, when we stand up and get at the rostrum, to represent not ourselves, but a divinely guided man, then the word proper takes on an even more significant meaning, because proper is not measured by the amount of applause, though that is good. That means people are receiving and they're acknowledging what we're saying. Proper isn't measured necessarily by the amount of charity, though that is good, because if we've delivered the right spirit and the right message, the people should be willing to give to support the cause of the truth that they just heard. And in truth, even though it's a good marker, just because people accept what we've said doesn't mean that it has been correct or satisfactory or proper teaching. Though, again, that is good, because it's a sign that whatever we've conveyed, people are now in agreement with, and if we conveyed the right idea, then they will hopefully take heed to those ideas, and that idea that is now planted in them will help transform their lives. But when we're talking about proper teaching and lecturing in our representation of a divinely guided man, then proper and what is correct is based exclusively on our nearness to the man that we're attempting to represent. That will all be conveyed in what we say, in how we say it, in our preparation, in our subject matter, in the verses of Scripture we pull, in the quotes we pull, in our spirit during the delivery, which ultimately will either make what we've delivered successful or not, based on the reaction of those people in front of us who we are representing the divinely guided man to. In Closing the Gap, there's a quote on page 202 where the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is quoted by Brother Jabril as having said that learning of a man is learning the inner workings of his mind, which then gives you the spirit out of which he does what he does. And this is why God is using him. All of us who want to attempt to represent the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we must study him first. We must look at him as he is the key and the door by which we can access the man that he's representing, who is the man that is taught by God himself. So there is a path that we have to take. And I would start by saying that in all that you do, try to absorb, not just mimic, not in a cheap way just recite and repeat what the minister has said without understanding or seeking understanding, because of course we want to quote him. His words, as he is the guide, are invaluable. But it is more than just mimicry that we want. What we want is to understand the man that we are representing and whose words we are reciting. When I was just in Indianapolis a few weeks ago, on the rostrum there, student minister Nuri Muhammad has a little badge at the top of the rostrum. And that badge says, "This rostrum belongs to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan." Every time we mount the rostrum, whether it's here at Mosque Mariam, whether it's there at Muhammad Mosque number 46, wherever we are, and we're speaking to God's people, we have to have at the core of our thinking and our spirit as we speak to them that they're not there to hear from us as individuals, and that we're representing a man that is so special, a man that has raised us to life, and by accepting the life that he has placed in us, we are now attempting to bring others to life. In order to do that, we have to properly understand and study the man that resurrected us so that we can properly understand how to affect that same change in other people. Our motive, no matter what subject we choose, must be to teach the people of he who gave us life. There's different methods to this. Some of us may have a leaning more towards history. Others have a leaning more towards current events. Others may have a leaning more towards being very scriptural exclusively in our presentation. All of those are just different methods, and we should learn to have some level of expertise and knowledge in all of those things, as we will be addressing different groups of people. But as I mentioned earlier, the best example to follow is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's been doing this for over 60 years, and he approaches it with the same vigor, with the same humility, with the same energy that he did when he first started over 60 years ago. He reminded us when we met with him in 2002 that we should select a subject that we are familiar with. In other words, teach what you know. Don't teach a subject that we don't understand ourselves. After we've selected our subject, then start digging into a theme that will be your basis for your subject. And by theme, we mean a spiritual or scriptural theme that will be the basis for your lecture. It doesn't mean that that will necessarily be the title of your lecture, but it should be the component that is running through all of the other aspects of your lecture, no matter where you decide to go with it. Once you've developed your theme, then take and put together notes, organizing scriptures, organizing quotes from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, from current events that bear witness to the theme that you are addressing. If we study the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, what he does is so special because of his level of love for the people that he's addressing. He's able to connect with the people and take them on a journey, if you will, that no matter where they are when he first speaks to them, by the time he concludes, he's brought them closer or over from where they were to where God intends for them to be. That's our objective when we're teaching or giving a lecture. In order to be effective at that, we have to understand the audience that we're speaking to. We have to have taken a level of time to try to understand or know something about them. And in particular for this group that we're on the phone with today, he reminded us that on Sundays when you speak, you're not teaching for those who've already accepted. They've already accepted. So we want to teach to those who are there for their first time, their second time, who have not accepted but who are drawn to this word. That's who we're aiming at. And the joy of those who've already accepted, the believers, will be in seeing those who did not believe yesterday now joining and coming on to their own. So we don't have to aim so much at the believer as much as it is for the first timer and those who are there we're trying to fish in to their own. How do we do this? It's so easy. There's so much from the knowledge that we have and been given. There's so much information. We're literally taught about the universe and our history that goes back to time immemorial. There's so much subject matter that we could delve into. But let's always remember and keep at our central focus what is our objective. Our objective in teaching, in particular in the setting of the mosque, but just as a general principle, is to bring over people, to convince them to accept something that we're teaching them as a fact or principle. In order to do that as effectively as our teacher does it, then we have to take on his mind, his spirit, and his heart. We can look up the books that he's told us to read. We can read every article that he's given to us. But if we're not actively engaged in improving ourselves, we will not have the proper effect, which means we will not be teaching properly. We will not be lecturing properly. Because the effectiveness, the magnetism that comes from our words is based on our own ability to live up to the word that we're speaking to others. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches from the same Bible that millions of preachers all over this planet teach from. Why do the same words that those preachers say, when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says the same quotes from the same scripture, why is their effect different when they come from his lips? It is because they come from the mouth of a man whose heart is so in love with God that he's trying every day to live up to the word that he's speaking. In other words, he's not being a hypocrite. He's not being slack. He's trying to be an example of the word that he teaches. And all of us who want to accept the duty and responsibility of representing that man have to attempt that same uphill road. We have to try to mirror his care. We have to try to mirror his love. We have to try to mirror his study. We have to try to mirror his work ethic. We have to give in charity like he told us. We have to eat as we've been instructed. We have to pray as we've been instructed. And we have to go out into the community and work as we've been instructed. There's no one thing that we can do that will make us effective at this duty, at this job. It is all of those things that we must look at and attend to if we are going to be real helpers in this cause. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said to Brother Jabril in one of the articles I asked Brother Willie to send out to everyone, entitled Method, Motive, Maturity, Love, the Keys to Learning. He was asked by Brother Jabril a question, and his question had to do with being a good student. And this was the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's response. He said, a good student learns from the good teacher. The method, the psychology of how to deal with the mind of the person in whom you hope to place a certain type of knowledge. You may not understand motive. You may not understand method. But as you mature in the practice of what your teacher is giving to you and you become one in spirit with the teacher, you then grow into the understanding of the method, the motivation, and then you are of the same mind, the same spirit, the same accord of the teacher. Now the student can become a teacher. This is really the criteria to be an effective and proper teacher and lecturer and student minister representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It is to be in relation to him as he is to his teacher. And that is something that we must strive for every single day. While we take the time to study and get information, let's not neglect our own souls and our own upward growth to try to grow into the great duty and responsibility that has been placed on the shoulders of those who wish to assist our teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It says in the other article that I sent to you all, the motives, purposes, and goals of God's servant. These words are attributed to Brother Jabril Muhammad as he's describing Minister Farrakhan in regards to motive. Motive has to do with the why, the reason that you do something. And I want to read his words, because if we don't understand the minister's motive, and if we're not in line with his motive, then we can never teach properly. As far off as we are from his motive for teaching, it will diminish our effectiveness as we teach whatever it is that we choose to teach. And these are Brother Jabril's words in that article. It says, none of us do what we do without a motive. Motive grows out of purpose and is directed or aimed at some goal. He, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, demonstrated time and again, both in words and in deeds, that his motive was the love of Allah, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the truth from and about him, the Christ, and black people, with an extraordinary degree of compassion for humanity at large. There can be no sane denial that in terms of effect, his purpose, aim, and goal was and is to plant deeper the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, his message and program in the minds and hearts of his hearers. The effect or result can be seen in the improved condition of those who accepted his preaching. Let me stop right there. There is our measurable outcome. Our effectiveness can be seen in the improved condition of those who accepted his preaching. If we are preaching properly, it will be seen not just in one aspect, but ultimately it will be seen in the lives of those who are brought to the truth by what we're saying. No one is greater at helping our people to transform their lives than the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And that is because within him, there is a singularity of mind and purpose to be in line with his teacher. We must accept that same line of thinking if we want to be effective as well. And I'll give this last quote as I get ready to start wrapping up. From that same article, Brother Jabril tells us that at the core of his message was the identification of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as the Christ, who was written about in the Old Testament and presented in the New Testament. Now, that's at the core of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's message, the identity and reality of the Christ. However, he does not necessarily just teach that or put that out to the people every single time he speaks. At the core of everything he teaches is that reality, But being respecters of the people and having a love and care for the people we're speaking to, we can't just introduce that idea without first laying the foundation for that. That goes for any subject, but that is the most profound of subjects there, is the understanding of who Jesus really is. We are attempting to represent this same idea, this same spirit, this same love, this same transformative mind to our people. And our effectiveness is built on the foundation that we are accepting or denying this same reality within our own personal lives. So we have to get into self-improvement study guides. I will share with you that personally, I was able, by the grace of Allah, when I was young in the ministry here in Chicago, I was given the assignment of being over the study group in Joliet, Illinois, which also included 2 other neighboring cities that were suburban cities. So in fact, we only had one study group in Joliet, but it was connected to 2 other cities in Aurora, Illinois, and I can't even remember the Bolingbrook, Illinois. Could almost not remember the name of the other city. Those days are the most cherished of my life because I had just been in the mosque about 1 year or less when I started assisting there. And when I was given charge of those assignments, I was in the study guides at least 3 days a week. One day in Bolingbrook, we were doing study group in a business. Another day, we were doing a study group in a home in Aurora, Illinois. And then on Friday nights, we were doing the study group in the study group building in a business in Joliet, Illinois. Not lecturing, but study guides, study group. And it was from being in those study guides 3 times a week, lecturing on Wednesdays, lecturing on Sundays, FOI class on Monday, going into the field every Saturday with the brothers and sisters. From that, developing lectures became easy because as I was studying and in the field and listening to the people in the study group circle, it was easy to pick up what we needed to discuss during the Sunday lecture. What were the principles? What were the things people dealing with when we knocked on the doors? What were people dealing with that they came into the study group with? So our self-improvement is absolutely at the core of being an effective lecturer, an effective teacher, but not in an artificial sense. It's not just about going home and reading the study guides. We have to be involved in the application of the study guides as they were prescribed by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And from that, I was able to easily, I don't want to use the word easily, but it became almost a no-brainer, if you will, on how to put together subjects for Sunday. It was so easy. I didn't have to sit and wrestle. By the time Saturday came and we were finished soldiering in the field, I had all my notes written already. I was still going home and studying. I was still trying to refine and find history, find better scriptures, find out what else was going on in the world that our people were dealing with so that I could bring them to light and show them to other people. But of course, in the use of the Final Call newspaper, we already have that as well. So we're using all of these components to bring it together. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan also reminded us when we met with him in 2002 that when we teach, we should be mindful of the audience. We are not trying to impress them with our words. We're trying to show them the beauty of the life that we've been given. And he reminded us on several occasions that what we teach, that the only subject that should be taught on a Sunday is the coming of God and the resurrection of our people. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the title of your subject, but as I mentioned earlier, that's the subject theme. That's the spirit. That's what we're trying to convey to our people, and God's brilliance that he's deposited in each of you will give different form to that theme and subject. But within you is a gift that, if properly mined out through adherence to self-improvement and the guidelines of the example of the life given to us by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, then when you and I get up to speak, people won't hear Brother Abel. People won't hear Brother Willie. They'll hear Farrakhan. And the humility that we must always be mindful of, and the posture we should always have of humility is to always acknowledge and remind the people, because they've never heard anything as powerful as we're going to give to them. This invincible truth. We must remind them always that we're not the originators of anything we're saying. We're students, co-students with them from a great teacher. And if we can keep that as our core, that as our essence, then we can preach and represent God's man properly, God's men properly. And I'll leave you with just this short anecdote as we open up for questions. I'll leave you with this quick anecdote. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in 2015, when he was touring for the Justice or Else movement, he closed that by speaking here in Chicago at a little church in the Mexican community of Pilsen here in Chicago. And even though he's my teacher and mentor and he's been doing this for over 60 years, I want to share this with you. Before he got on the rostrum that day to speak, he called me. And I was shocked, to be honest with you. He called me and he literally asked me what I thought he should speak about that evening. And he asked me some questions about the community. He asked me, and we talked for about 40 minutes to an hour. And it struck me that here's a man who's been teaching for over 60 years. He's been all over the planet. He's talked to literally millions of people at a time, arenas full, black, brown, red, yellow, white, different continents. Yet he calls his student to ask him what he thinks should be said, and then asks the most intelligent and profound questions so that he better understands the community that he's about to address. That's proper preaching. That's the essence of love, is looking at a student and being a real teacher and seeing that those ears that he's going to address, he doesn't take for granted and say, oh, I've been doing this for 60 years, I got this. The humility and love and seriousness that he takes on to make sure that he understands and knows something about the people before he addresses them, knows something about the church before he walks into it. It made me view him and raised him even higher than he was in my mind, to know the level of beauty and the level of seriousness and attention and love that he has, that he would respect the audience like that, that he would respect the people like that. And if we can always be that kind of student, then we will be successful and we will be proper representatives of that beautiful man that we all hope to one day be able to properly represent. So I thank you, brothers and sisters, and if we can open it up, I think now for questions, Brother Willie.
Yes, sir. We're going to open up for questions, and thank you for all that you shared. It's something I definitely want to go back and listen to, and as they say, parse, if I'm saying that word right. So for those people who are online, if you have a question, you would just press *6, and you can ask Brother Abel a question. It may take a little while before they do able to come on.
Sure. And while we're waiting, go ahead.
When you have your questions, I was telling people whoever come on who have a question, just state their name and what city they're from. Anyone?
And if I can, while we're waiting for anyone, Brother Willie, I'll just add this too, that as I'm looking at some of the notes here, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan asked us to study the life of Prophet Muhammad. as he said that he's the prophet of all of those who are written of in the scripture, we know more about Prophet Muhammad than any other prophet in history. And that his life is reflective of the life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his own life, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And he let us know that we should attempt, when we're speaking, we have to be able to connect the dots for our people, from the Quran to the Bible to the supreme wisdom. And what he said in clarifying that statement, he said we have to know something about all of those books, if you will, including the supreme wisdom, which he said was not just the lessons, but all of the teachings that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and himself have given to us, and be able to show our people how they are connected, how this is not something foreign that is coming. This is actually the lineage of what was talked about in those other books, that this is exactly in line with those teachings.
Thank you for sharing. What I'm going to do, I'm going to unmute everybody. Everybody's unmuted. So if I've unmuted everybody, thank you for that as well. Anybody has any questions? So I take it as, I guess that means
yes, I have a
no.
question.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Brother Akim out of New Orleans, Master number 46. Assalamu alaikum, dear brother.
Wa alaikum salam, brother.
Yes, brother, have you had any struggles when you first began to teach in the ministry?
Yes, I think all of us do. They're called growing pains. It is anything new that we take on, and there's always a difficulty factor, and there's always trial and error. You know, we try to be as effective as we can be, but until you get up on the rostrum, and I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. I've mentioned it before from the rostrum. I used to be terrified about public speaking. I would literally, ditch school and not go to school on days when I had, or fake like I was sick on days when we had to do presentations in the classroom. But it wasn't until I got a hold, or these teachings got a hold of me, I didn't instantly now want to just stand up and talk in front of people. That's not how it worked either. I was still terrified. But Allah made it so that I was sort of forced to be up in front of people. I never asked to be in a ministry class. I never asked to speak in the community or at the rostrum, but I said I wanted to help, and they asked me to speak, so I did. And the first few times, like with anything, I wasn't sure what I should say, how I should say it, even though I'd written things down, and you get nervous and forget to look at your notes and things, and those, just in terms of getting in front of people, there was a difficulty factor. But also, as I mentioned earlier, we know so much and have been given so much, it's hard to figure out, in one sense, how to keep it simple, how to mic it down to just one or two points that you want to raise for the people so that you can spark something in them without going into necessarily, some of the deeper aspects of what we've been given. And it's something that we have to wrestle with. And ultimately for me, though, the greatest struggle has been that lesson that the minister told us, which was the word is so perfect and we're not. And he shared with us, I'm reading it from the notes, is that we're trying to always run and catch up with the word that we speak. And the level of our commitment to being the word that we speak, that's where the difficulty, to me, the greatest difficulty is, because sometimes you look at it and say, man, that's so good. How could we ever reach that? How could I ever personally reach that? But Allah would not have given it to us if it was something we could not attain to. But it's something that will take great work. And personally, that's the constant struggle, is trying to be the example of the words that we teach. To me, that right now is the greatest struggle, for it to be constant, because we all have our good days and our bad days. But our constancy in that we are always on the grind, always on the uphill road. That's the struggle that I think many of us fall victim to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that
question. Anyone else has a question? Well, I take that as a no. So
Walaikum salam.
Brother Willie. Brother Willie, this is Brother James from Mobile, Alabama.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I had a question for Brother Abel.
Go ahead, brother.
Okay, yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Abel.
Walaikum salam.
Yes, sir, dear brother. I have a question in regards to, in Mobile, living in the South, we haven't had a really strong Latino community, but over the past 10 years or so, there's been a growing Latino community in the city, and essentially, I've had some issues in terms of, maybe you can give me some pointers in terms of how to properly engage our Latino brothers and sisters. I mean, of course, sometimes there's an issue in terms of language barriers because of English, because I don't speak Spanish. However, just in those instances where I meet a Latino brother or sister that speaks fluent English, sometimes, there's cultural barriers, and sometimes I think there's a little hesitancy for them to really kind of open up to what I'm attempting to deliver to them. So maybe you could give me some pointers in terms of how I could possibly engage our Latino brothers and sisters more effectively.
Especially in a rural or more rural area like you have in the South in many areas, especially under the current administration of Donald Trump, there's a lot of fear from people, from anyone who is unlike them, because they don't know who to trust. And I'll say it to you like this, though, and I've used this example before, but I've seen the minister on the farm win people to Islam who don't speak any English at all, Mexican brothers and sisters, just because of his way. And it's a harder, if you will, sell to people, because especially if they don't speak the language, but even if they speak English, culturally they're coming from a different language. So they may not, if they're not from America and culturally their roots are in Central or South America, their way of life is so different, they feel disconnected to people here. And the media gives them, in particular, very negative portrayals of black people. So generally, you won't find people necessarily open to anything, an invitation from black people. But even though it's a longer struggle, when they see the consistency of you as a black man or black woman that is trying to live upright, trying to live clean, being productive, being a positive influence in the community, it wins people, just like the minister did. Even though the people couldn't hear his lectures, there was nothing he could say, per se, that would win them. But they studied him by working on the farm over months and years, and they wanted to be Muslims because of his example. And I think that's the core. That's the best teaching that we have. Is not what we say, but it's what we do. So when you encounter those brothers and sisters, just be mindful that you'll have to take your time. Be mindful that the smile, even if they don't understand the language, a smile speaks for everyone. Shaking their hand speaks volumes, and it may not be the first time, it may not be the second time, but eventually they'll remember the smiling face from the brother, and eventually they'll take the paper, even if they can't read it, and they'll give it to their son or daughter. And I've had it happen to me where somebody just randomly gave me $5, and they were like, well, I don't read English. Like, I don't need the paper. I told them to take it anyway and give it to somebody, one of their relatives or somebody who can read it. Those kind of things, it's like an investment that you're making. And in particular with the Latino community right now, they're under siege and very afraid that they're becoming very insulated, and they don't know who to trust and who to open up to. And seeing the strength and friendship of a black man means a lot, because we know that there's a bond between us, but we also know that there's black people who are with Trump. You understand what I'm saying? There's black people who have the same thinking, so they don't know which one you are. And out of self-preservation, they'll just rather get away. I'm going around people I know. But over time, they'll get to know, and I would just be consistent, brother. Just be consistent when you see them. Be consistent with what you have to offer. Even if they turn it down, like the minister has instructed us, well, may God bless you anyway, and you'll be shocked at who turns around after hearing that. You'll be shocked at, because you're appealing to their nature now. Their nature is your nature, and they are more removed from it because we haven't been given this teaching in the way that Black America has, but it's growing. It's growing. So you're fighting the negative influence of the media's portrayal of black people, and a double whammy, the negative influence of the media's portrayal of Islam. So you have a double thing that you're fighting. So any inroads that you make, it's going to take time, but all you need is one. That one brother, that one sister that will be sparked and say, man, because your example crushes all of those stereotypes. All the media is telling them all black people, do is negative. They're thieves. They don't have respect for themselves or other people. You're destroying all of that in one encounter. So that in and of itself will make them attract to you, even if they don't understand it. And then it just is a matter of nursing, if you will, that relationship and allowing it to mature over time. And when I say time, I'm not talking about years. I'm talking about just a couple of encounters. And your consistency there will eventually spark the curiosity in somebody who will say, let me read that paper you always have. Let me go check out what you all are talking about. And from that, all you need is one. And from that one, others will come.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure. Anyone else have any questions?
I have a question. This is Sister Beverly Muhammad from Atlanta. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, ma'am.
I have a daughter-in-law who is Latino, and I love her family. There is a language barrier, and I want to be able to give them DVDs of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But again, there's the language barrier there. So I wanted to ask the question, has anyone made a suggestion or thought perhaps we could get some of the minister's lectures with a subscript in Espanol on the bottom, like when you go to the movies, you may see a movie in French or Mandarin.
Yes, ma'am.
The English is on the bottom. Is there a way perhaps we could take the minister and put a subscript in Espanol for our Latino brothers and sisters to hear in real time the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, and that is a great idea. The trouble has been with us having to outsource somebody to do that. We have the technology to be able to do that on our DVDs. The trouble is having somebody transcribe them from the English to the Spanish, and it be a correct. We've experimented a little, and in one or two lectures we hired somebody to transcribe them, but because we're dealing with, as I mentioned, two very unique things, and that this isn't just a college lecture on some subject or that it's written out. Many times the minister is dealing with very heavy spiritual subjects. You need somebody who is oriented in both languages spiritually in terms of knowing Quran and Bible, which is very hard to find in the other languages. Also, though, that has an understanding of the context that the minister is teaching in when he uses sort of colloquial expressions. Those are the hardest things because the minister is speaking to a predominantly black audience in Black America on most occasions. That's his focus. And sometimes those terms that he uses, if we translate them literally, they just don't have any context in another language. So those have been the two difficult things, is finding accurate translations to do it, but it has been, and it's something we have on the table that we're working on to put it on the videos. But until that happens, we do currently have in production right now The Time and What Must Be Done. I believe it's the first 20 episodes have been translated, as well as because those are a little bit easier because we had a transcript already. And so we just had to translate the transcript, not transcribe it and translate it, which is another sort of difficulty factor added to it. But we have transcribed those, And it's just a matter of now editing them and getting them. We're not sure if they're going to do it exclusively as a book format, but we're going to do that. Message to the Black Man has been translated. How to Eat to Live has been translated. We're just editing them because to do a direct translation from English to Spanish, understanding the cultural context of how certain terms are used in Spanish, we can't do a direct translation. It has to have some level of what you would call there is no better term. We have to make certain inferences and also make certain adaptations so that it makes sense to a black person reading it in Cuba, somebody reading it in Mexico, somebody reading it in Latin America. But we're really close to being there with it. So I'm assuming, just from where we are production-wise, the books will be available first. But if the Time and What Must Be Done books are available, we may also, since we have the format for it, put those on the video format of the Time and What Must Be Done, so that you, as you mentioned, can read the minister's words in Spanish. Since they're up on YouTube and everything, we may try it there with those first episodes to make sure that, just to see how effective and what kind of reach we can get with them. And then also, but it is the minister's desire for us to move into also doing full transcriptions, full translations of his lectures. They're very difficult to do real time. We've hired we did do in 2007, the Detroit lecture was translated in several languages, but when we went back and looked at the transcripts, they weren't 100% accurate because it's so difficult to have the base of knowledge on all of those levels that I mentioned earlier that the minister talks on. It's just second nature to him, but when you're translating those terms between cultures, it becomes difficult sometimes. So that's been our biggest challenge, but it is definitely something that we are actively working on and very close to, inshallah, soon presenting to our nation.
Thank you, Brother. May Allah continue to bless you in that effort. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Anybody else? If you have any questions, this is your opportunity. Every time I get ready to say no.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
If no one else has a question, I have one more.
Yes,
I don't want to dominate, but it's a question that I've been wanting to ask you for some time, Brother. In our student enrollment, we are told that our nation is 19 million, which includes the 2 million Indians. Most Latinos are of Indian descent, Mayan, Aztec, etc. Do most Latinos realize that lineage, and if so, that may be a good tool to have them introduced into the nation as an intricate part of our total population?
Yes, ma'am. You know, they do have some level of understanding, and it's a growing group of brothers and sisters from Mexico and Latin America that are embracing their indigenous lineage. But for many, many years, being an Indian or descendant from Indians was something that was made mockery of and that people tried to distance themselves from, because the people in Mexico in particular, but in Latin America, were taught that the Indians who were here were savages. And they've been Christianized, which is really white supremacy, but they've been taught and brought up under the thinking that the white people coming and doing what they did was a blessing, that they were civilized. Without the white people and the Spaniards coming, we wouldn't have culture, we wouldn't have, economy, we wouldn't have our what we know as life today. But it totally erases and negates the Indian cultures and civilizations that existed here prior to the coming of Caucasians. So the Indian is literally painted, as a mongrel, as a ignorant buffoon who can't be taught. To call somebody an Indian in Mexico is to mean that they're stupid. So you'll actually hear terms where people will say, oh, don't be an Indian. And they mean don't be stupid. That's the equation of the two. So who would want to be recognized as being stupid? Nobody would. So they purposely inserted into the historical teaching of the people and the cultural teaching of the people the hatred to that indigenous connection. But it has been coming up now where their people are re-embracing that great indigenous ancestry. They're becoming more aware of the contribution and the great civilizations that existed here prior to the coming of Caucasian people. But that's still not the predominant thought. They're still being a Mexican, even though in most cases it is synonymous with being an Indian. The average Mexican does not necessarily see it that way, but it is growing. It is growing in consciousness, and I agree that it is a great idea and a good way to spark people's interest into knowing that, everybody understands that Master Fard Muhammad didn't come to make us into something else. He came to give us our own so that we could accept it and be ourselves. So when you start teaching a people about who they are, even if they don't know it, there's a natural curiosity. There's a natural longing to and desire to know that, and especially when you start talking to a people about their greatness, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, it's going to be hard to not accept that, even though the white man's world and ideology has made us put up a self-defense mechanism that actually does make us reject that personal greatness, that self-greatness that we come from. So it is a good tool, if you will, to use to tell a Mexican or indigenous brother, do you know the greatness of your people? Do you know that you were building pyramids while white people were in caves? Do you know that you had civilization and culture already that was destroyed by the Spaniards? But we have to be careful because many people, like our own people, love white Spaniards, love white people. We're still enamored with this people who conquered and enslaved us. So just understand that there is going to be that resistance, so we have to be skillful in the way that we present the idea, but it is there to be presented. We can tell them the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that this is the land of the native people. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us that this land would be given back to the Mexican people. So these are things that are truths that are in our teachings that we can use as a tool to spark in people and say, well, man, I didn't even know. I thought you all were always just talking about black people. And even though we understand that they're part of the black nation, they're not there to see themselves yet as that, but we can bring them up into that thinking by first start with self. Start with letting them understand their identity. Let them understand who they are and how they relate to the rest of the people. Now, if you notice in that question and answer that you quoted, Sister, number 3, the question is first asked, what is the population of the original nation in the wilderness of North America and all over the planet Earth? There's 2 parts to the answer. The first part is the population of the original nation in the wilderness of North America is 17 million, period. That's the first part of this answer. Start with self, the people that you're speaking to. If he would have been speaking with Indians, he would have given them the different part of the answer first. But you start with self first. Then you add the with. With the 2 million Indians makes it 19 million. Because you start with self and then you introduce them to the other part of self that they didn't even know existed. So the same thing happens here, but from the opposite direction. We start with self, let them fall in love with being Mexican, let them fall in love with being Indian. Then you can let them know, but you got brothers in other parts of the world. You got brothers in Africa. You got brothers in the Caribbean. You got brothers in China. It grows. You start with self first, and then it grows out. But it's a beautiful point. Thank you, Sister.
Thank you, Brother.
Anyone else? Anyone else have any questions? Okay. All right, well, what we normally do for all of those who are still on, we would ask that you, after the message is over, send me a text message letting me know what did you gain or what did you benefit. What did you get from what our brother shared tonight on the topic that he actually talked about. And please send the feedback because we find it helpful and it's beneficial and it's helping us to be able to organize the last remaining classes. So if you gained anything, please send a text message. It's very short, straight to the point. And Brother Abel, we thank you for taking time out, man, for sharing all that what you shared from about how to structure our lectures, proper preaching, and even the additional stuff that you responded to as it relates to the question. So we really appreciate it. And what I'm going to do is, as we do it all, I'll send you a copy of this actual recording as well.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for the invitation. I thank all of those co-students with us in this class, and I pray that what we have offered and what we will do will be the greatest bearing of witness of our love and our commitment to help our people and God's servant to help our people.
Yes, sir. So thank you. And also, brothers and sisters who've made it time to call in, we thank you all for taking the time out and for all of your questions. And remember, send a few words, some feedback. What did you get from the words our brother shared tonight? And I'll be sending you and you all our emails and, what's the next course. We did 2 in a row to help us get back on schedule, so we're back on schedule now. So we'll be sending out, and we have a few more classes. So thank you, family. May Allah continue to bless each and every one of you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.